Well, I'm delighted to announce that my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, was released in March, and I'm quite excited about it. It's a sequel to my first two books, Dancing on a Stamp and Dancing Forever with Spirit, and it chronicles my second set of astral trips with my spirit guide, Albert. And I met my spirit guide back in 2007 when he confronted me on the street one day disguised as a homeless man. And my first book was about my dialogue with my spirit guide. Second book was about my first set of astral trips, and the third book is another set of astral trips. And how they arise is that Albert shows up in my bedroom unannounced, and he basically takes me by the hand, pulls my astral body out of my physical body, and we head off to the spirit side, to other parts of the universe. And his reason for doing so is to allow me to write about what I hear and see on my trips in my books. So that's the sole purpose. And each of the visits is designed to teach me and all humanity a lesson or provide us with a nugget of wisdom. So it's not for my entertainment or to satisfy my own curiosity. He wants me to write about what I see and hear. And so in the third book, he came back into my life again, the same way, came into my bedroom, pulled my astral body out of my physical body, and we rose up through the ceiling to a high point above Earth, and we went through the doorway to the spirit side again as we did before. And there I met again with the Council of Wise Ones, which is the committee of very wise and advanced souls whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on Earth. And they had a message from me again similar to what they told me in my second book, which was they're not happy about the progress that humans are making in terms of discarding their negative emotions and embracing love and compassion. And they say that we really need to step up the pace and become more spiritually enlightened and raise our consciousness before we destroy ourselves and everything else on the planet. So that was just sort of a recurring message. But then Albert took me to a number of interesting places. One of the most surprising ones was he took me to a cavern under the North Pole where I had a conversation with the consciousness of Mother Earth. Her name is Gaia, as you probably know. So it was a bit of a surprise because most of us think that our planet is nothing but a bunch of inert rocks and oceans and mountains and deserts, but it has a consciousness. And I spoke to this consciousness, and she was a very wise lady who was very fiercely protective of her flora and fauna. She wants to have everything in balance, in harmony. She wants everyone to live together peacefully, and she was quite upset at the way humans had been abusing her with their pollution, poisoning her rivers and her atmosphere and her soil, and also abusing her other creatures. And humans are sort of she said, we're basically bad news for the planet, especially since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, where we've really increased our pollution a lot. And so she was really dismayed at how humans had been behaving, and she really wanted me to take the message back to my fellow humans that we needed to clean up our act, stop polluting, Mother Earth, which we've been doing, quite a bit for the last few centuries, and stop abusing her other animals. And the surprising thing was she said that she has the capability to fight back. She can actually increase the number and intensity of natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, droughts, fires, that kind of thing. And she has been doing a bit of that in the last while. It's a warning shot across our bow to sort of make us wake up and realize that if we don't change our ways, it could be disastrous for us and for the planet and for all the other animals. So very interesting conversation. And then Albert took me to meet a couple of the fabled creatures from legends, on our planet. The first one was a Sasquatch. This was in the Pacific Northwest of America, in a meadow in a secluded forest. I met with a Sasquatch named Xana, and she was about 9 feet tall. She had sort of an ape-like head, and her muscular body was covered in dark brown hair. We communicated by telepathy, and she said that her race has been around for eons, and they hide from humans because they view us to be violent and aggressive, and they don't want to have any contact with us. So they hide in underground caves, underground cities, and they have what she termed was like an animal-sensitive radar that could allow them to detect humans from miles away. And that's how they've been able so far to avoid open detection. And they have been spotted once in a while. As you know, there are reports about people seeing Bigfoot or Yeti or Sasquatch, but for the most part, they stay in hiding. And she, like Gaia, she was dismayed at the way humans have been acting, and she says that they really want to live openly and in harmony with us, but they won't do that until we lose our aggression and our propensity for violence. And so until that happens, they don't want to have anything to do with us. And then I met another beautiful little creature in Ireland, a little fairy, one of the little people. Her name was Brina. And she was a beautiful little lady. She was about 3 feet tall. She looked like a tiny, perfect China doll, just exquisite. And she said that the fairies, the little people, used to live openly in Ireland, and they used to, frolic in the sunshine and dance in the rain. But when humans came to the island, they had to begin hiding underground, just like the Sasquatch, because humans were violent and aggressive. And so they are still in hiding, and they again voiced their dismay at the way humans have treated them in the past and other creatures. And they really wish that we would learn to change our ways so they could live openly with us and they could once again frolic in the sunshine. So 2 messages from 2 fabled creatures that basically the same. And the news for us is that we really should change our ways so that these creatures, these very intelligent, sensitive creatures, can once again live openly on our planet. And then another interesting, very interesting trip I had was to another planet in our galaxy, many light years from Earth, and there was a human civilization that was a matriarchal society, and it was entirely ruled by women. The men were not allowed to vote or to hold any position of power or any management position. And she said that they lived very peacefully. There was no violence or crime because the women were always able to settle their differences peacefully. And the men were very docile and compliant because all baby boys were chemically sterilized at the age of 3 years. So they had very low testosterone levels. And so, and she said, but despite this, they didn't subjugate their men. They treated them fairly. The men were free to pursue recreational activities, do sporting events, and just enjoy life. So they weren't mistreated. They just weren't allowed to vote or hold any position of power. And she says they never missed their sex drive because they never remembered having it, because they were basically sterilized at the age of 3. She said that their civilization used to be a patriarchal society way back when, that was where the women were subjugated by violent men. And then one woman had a vision one night in a dream that there was a plant in the forest that if the men ingested it, it would reduce their testosterone levels. So they secretly fed this way back when to their men, and eventually they just sort of took over, and so they've been living peacefully ever since. So quite a different from our society. And I thought to myself, maybe there should be some happy medium between their matriarchal society, the extremes of that society, and the male-dominated world that we currently live in on Earth. But anyway, it was just a different take on how another human civilization has lived quite differently than we do. So it was very interesting. I met a number of people. Albert introduced me to a number of very wise and compassionate souls in the spirit side, some of them very famous. I had one meeting which I was really, a big take back for me. I saw 2 souls sitting on a bench, and as I got closer, I could see one was Jesus Christ in a white robe, and the other one was Adolf Hitler in his military uniform. And the 2 of them were chatting peacefully together. And I thought that was strange because it's sort of their polar opposites. After Albert made the introductions, the soul who was Adolf Hitler, he morphed back into his natural appearance on the spirit side, and he was a young man named Matthew. And he said, yes, his last life he had lived as Adolf Hitler. He was horribly sorry for all the damage and killings and so on that he had caused when he was still on the earth. But he said that he hadn't planned any of that before he was born, that it happened because his negative emotions got out of control, his fear, anger, hate, greed, that sort of thing. And so one thing led to another, and that's where all the damage was caused. But he did say that he has met with a number of the souls who died in his death camps, and there's been total reconciliation, because he says that once souls return to the spirit side, they leave behind all the hatred, animosity, need for revenge, and they all just unconditionally love each other. So none of that sort of followed him across to the spirit side. And he's really sorry for what he did, and he said he wanted to reincarnate on Earth again to try to make amends and do better, based upon what his last life was all about. And so that was very interesting. And then the whole while he was talking, Jesus was sitting there and nodding and smiling. Jesus said that he and Matthew, who used to be Adolf Hitler, get together quite often to discuss their lives on earth. And so Jesus said that he incarnated on earth like 2,000 years ago at the request of the Council of Wise Ones, because they wanted him to help humanity increase their spiritual awareness and sort of move on up the spiritual ladder. That was his intent. And he said that he's a master soul. So when he was on earth, he had learned how to focus his thoughts into powerful beams of energy. He tapped into the forces of the universe. That's how he caused his miracles. He created his miracles by using focused thoughts. So he was able to walk on water and turn water into wine and all the other miracles that are described in the scriptures. And I asked him, well, if you had such power, Jesus, why didn't you prevent yourself from being crucified on the cross? And he said he could have, had he chosen to, but he wanted to make a very dramatic statement for his followers, and he thought that dying on the cross and then resurrecting later would make a very dramatic statement. And he really wanted his followers to create a new religion, but he had no idea as to how it would play out. And he was a bit dismayed at how the church has developed, by the people, the men following him, and has sort of gone off on various tangents. And he just said, that's humanity. You don't know quite how these things are going to turn out. You just have to let it play out. And he said too many of the men who followed him, the religious leaders, had their own agendas, and their agendas were to control the masses through guilt and fear. And so that's why there's a lot of the rules that they developed, the concept of that there's a hell, and of course there isn't any. It's just a tool to instill fear in the masses. And Jesus was, upset about this, but there was nothing much he could do. Anyway, so it was a very, very, very interesting conversation. That was, one of the highlights was meeting him. Also got a chance to meet Moses, who's a famous biblical character. And he also was a master, and he used, like Jesus, the power of focused thought to create his miracles. So he created the plagues that he visited on Egypt to try to convince the Pharaoh to release his people. And he also, he said he didn't actually part the Red Sea. He created an interdimensional wormhole that allowed his people to escape from the Egyptian army. And he said that the Ten Commandments, they weren't created or dictated by God. And this confirms what Albert told me earlier, that God or the source does not make rules for us to follow. He said that he conceived the Ten Commandments when he was in a period of deep meditation. And so that's where they came from. Very interesting soul, very wise. And I said, do you have any plans of incarnating back on earth again? He said if the Council of Wise Ones asked him to, he will, but nothing that's planned so far. And so that was some of the highlights from my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss.